Well, hello, it's Robert again, and coming back to show you some more of my country collection and things that I really like a lot, that I've really enjoyed. And I've collected a lot of country over the years. I have a rock collection too, but just to share a few of my country collection as I'm looking back and playing some now. I got the Jimmy Rogers album on the turntable, that album of my Rough and Rowdy Ways. But we'll start with one here, one of the old MGM albums of Hank Williams of Mona and the Blues, and features Honky Tonk Blues, Lovesick Blues, I'm a Long Gone Daddy, and others. This was one of the mid 50s original MGM releases of Hank Williams. Now, next we have the Carlisles. They were popular in the 50s, Bill Carlisle. And again, those early underpinnings of rockabilly with No Help Wanted, Not Whole, Too Old to Cut the Mustard, and others. They were a very fun group, very talented. They even did some serious songs, but they are worth a listen. And this was an album released back in the late 50s of their early 50s recordings. And we have Dolly Parton. That was her first RCA album of Just Because I'm a Woman. This is actually even the original Black Label RCA pressing on it. But when she signed in '67 with RCA, this was the first album and features that earlier Dolly Parton country sound. And then we have one of the early King releases of Hawkshaw Hawkins, Volume 1. King did a lot of nice album issues over the years of their various artists, and this is an excellent listen here. Of course, Hawkshaw Hawkins was one that he died in a plane crash with Patsy Cline, but did a lot more for country music than just die in the same plane crash, for sure. Next, here's an interesting album. This came out in the early 60s on Star Day, but it was Alex Campbell and Ola Bell. They were brother and sister. They ran a country music park from out near Pennsylvania, Maryland line, out near Rising Sun. It was called New River Ranch for years. They called their band the New River Boys. But they made some nice recordings in their own right. This is one of the old Star Day releases of those. Then we have one of my favorite groups, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. This album was released back in the late 50s on the Mercury label, and it contains the old Mercury recordings from the late 40s, early 50s, very early 50s, The Roll My Sweet Baby's Arms, Foggy Mountain Breakdown, Farewell Blues, and many more, Salty Dog Blues. The picture on the front is interesting because it shows a mid-50s lineup. Very nice cover shot. None of these musicians, other than Lester and Earl, pretty much were on their old Mercury recordings. Buck Graves joined on Dobro in 1955. He doesn't appear on any of the Mercury recordings, of course. But good album nonetheless. It's one of the best that you can get of them. Now we got here very early Chet Atkins music. Chet Atkins recordings a lot through the 60s. He released a ton of albums. Very pop-oriented, Nashville sound, typical things. His recordings were more exciting, the ones he made in the 40s and early, mid-50s. They were with smaller combos. Some of them used a fiddle and steel guitar and really just focused on the guitar work. They were definitely more country in nature, as this is, with Main Street Breakdown, Black Mountain Rag, Oh by Jingo, Galloping Guitar, and others. Then we got another one of the famous bluegrass bands from years ago, and they also were on King Records. Don Reno and Red Smalley, the Tennessee Cut-Ups. They had a number of very popular recordings. In 1956, they had I Know You're Married, But I Love You Still. Don Reno was a fantastic banjo player, good songwriter. They had good harmony in their singing, and this is certainly a good cover shot of them, and a great album of some early and mid-50s cuts by Don and Red. Now, getting up a little later, this came out in the 60s. One of the Merle Haggard songs, Sing Me Back Home. Very nice recording. The hit track on here. But all of Merle Haggard's albums of the time were pretty good to listen to. This is one of the better ones. And then we have a couple early Buck Owens albums. Here's one from the early 60s, I Don't Care, which featured that hit. And they also feature a number of also instrumentals and recordings too by the Buckaroos, particularly Don Rich. But these are very good albums. Buck Owens made quite a few in the 60s. This is a real good album as well. Now, the first Capitol release of Buck Owens was this album right here. And this came out in the late 50s. and featured Above and Beyond, Second Fiddle, Excuse Me, I Think I Got a Heartache, Under Your Spell Again, My Everlasting Love. Just a good, straight country honky-tonk sound. And then, in collecting over 40 years, the hardest things I've had finding is actually good copies of 10-inch country albums. When you go into stores and you see the 10-inch albums, they're mostly popular music. If you do see a country 10-inch, it is very rare. They're generally beat up even if you find one. And that's been the hardest albums I've had finding in my collection, is good quality, good shape 10-inch albums. Now, here's a few, and I've got probably about 30, but here's one of the Hank Williams in the 50s of Honky Tonkin'. Also Hank Snow. This was also one of his from the early 50s. It featured I'm Moving On, Rumble Boogie, Golden Rocket, and others. And then another Hank Williams, Luke the Drifter, that also the old 10-inch release. Those are just a few. And just finally, show you a nice 78 LP of Ernest Tubb. And one of the few times you see him without his hat. But this was an album came out in 1947 as 478s. Also came out a little later as 345s in a box. So anyway, that's a few for today. Hope you enjoyed that. And we'll let Jimmie Rodgers continue to play here. And this album is the one of the well-known ones of his, My Rough and Rowdy Ways, and that's what's on the turntable right now. This album featured In the Jailhouse Now, Mule Skinner Blues, My Rough and Rowdy Ways, and Southern Cannonball, a lot of other good numbers there. So we'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed that. And we just want to say hi and shout out to you. Take care, and we'll see you again. Bye now.